We're speaking with Yossi Melman, of course, a long time journalist in Israel, and also my partner in writing so far 6 books. One almost loses count about the Middle East, Israeli security agencies. But Yossi, you are now a filmmaker. You've made a documentary that premiered on Israeli TV on a channel called Hot 8. You and Nadav Ben-Sur made a film with an intriguing title, right? It's about the 30th anniversary, or set for the 30th anniversary of the Rabin assassination. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin shockingly shot dead in Tel Aviv in November of 1995. But you are looking especially at the incitement that led to that in the months before the killing of Rabin, what happened after that, the role perhaps especially of Benjamin Netanyahu, who was opposition leader at the time, but the next year would be elected prime minister. There's a lot there. The title of the film in Hebrew is Mesitim Mabat, kind of a play on words that suggests averting their gaze, as though people didn't want to look at the full evidence of what had occurred. But the word Mesitim also means inciting. So specifically kind of ignoring the incitement. But of course, in your film, you are not doing so. So Yossi Melman, in this film, when it comes to incitement in the background, and the failure of the security agency Shin Bet to stop the assassin Yigal Amir with everything that was known. What did you come up with that, frankly, is new 30 years later?
Well, there are some newsworthy elements in the film, which I'll later discuss, but our approach was to try to document the events which led to the murder, the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, through various layers and prisms, and to discuss what happened in the aftermath of the killing, to look in a whole picture of the events from the security services point of view, from the judiciary point of view, from the government point of view, and from the public attitude. Now, one of the main reasons why we decided to do this film was because we are now 30 years after the murder. There is a young generation who not only don't know about what happened there, they don't know who Rabin was. You ask people, who was Rabin? They don't know.
That's quite stunning, of course, right? People like us who remember the shocking event of November 1995 also remember that Rabin was a war hero. We would say a hawk. He'd been chief of staff of the military, he'd been defense minister, a hero, certainly, of the Six-Day War in 1967. But with his Labor Party colleague and rival, and not really a friend, Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin was converted into a man of peace. And he was shot dead at the very end of a large peace rally in Tel Aviv. And so he's remembered as this hawk turned dove, or man of war turned man of peace. And so you thought that should be underlined for younger viewers. And I guess that would also explain better to them why Israel's right wing, notably settlers who want to keep the West Bank forever, hated what he was doing, trying to negotiate peace with the Palestinians.
Well, Rabin was defense minister in the first Intifada, 87-90, and he was known for his saying, break their bonds. That was it telling the military to do to the Palestinians who rioted and protested and demonstrated and used stones, kind of uprising against the Israeli occupation. But later on, he realized, when he became a prime minister for his second term in 1992, 1993, he realized that violence and war is not a solution. That must be an alternative. And he basically did not initiate the Oslo Accords, the reconciliation with the PLO. He was very reluctant doing it. He was pushed more by Peres and his lieutenants. But once he decided that the peace path is the right one. He was fully committed to the peace arrangement with the Palestinians, and that's how the Oslo Accords began, with Israel starting withdrawing from parts of Gaza and the West Bank, signing agreement after agreement with Yasser Arafat, sponsored, by the way, by the Clinton administration. And the Israeli right, especially the extreme right, didn't like it, because they said Rabin is a traitor, Rabin is a murderer, and it was in the open, in the public space. That's how they were shouting and chanting in the streets. I mean, Netanyahu, as you mentioned, was the leader of the opposition, and he was pushing the protesters, I mean, to do more and more, to be more and more violent. He led a march carrying a coffin with Rabin's name on it. So, and then, you know, he in one of the demonstrations, some of the protesters printed Rabin's in the uniform of an SS officer. So the incitement was there. The inflammatory rhetoric was, I mean, unbelievable. Then there were rabbis with whom the murderer, the assassin, consulted, and he asked them for a religious decree that it is legitimate and justified to kill the prime minister, because he's a traitor to the Jewish people, is giving up the land of Israel to the Palestinians.
And some of the extremist rabbis agreed with that, gave him the judgment he wanted to receive. And now back to Netanyahu for a second. He has sort of vaguely said, I wasn't calling for Rabin's death, but especially in the context of your film, Yossi, there it is, right? Netanyahu is there. He's leading a march. At another event, he's up on a balcony. And down below, that crowd is calling for Rabin's death, right? Rabin as a Nazi, Rabin as a Palestinian terrorist, the coffin. It's not something really that Netanyahu has succeeded to walk away from, except 30 years later, he probably would hope that it had been forgotten and Israel might avert its gaze, looking at the title of your film.
Well, that was one of the reasons why we decided to do the movie, not to let Netanyahu and the Israeli right off the hook. Now, and on that demonstration, which you just described in Jerusalem, there were speakers on the balcony when opposition leaders, Ariel Sharon and others, most of them left the balcony when they heard the shouting and the chanting of the crowd. Rabin is a murderer, Rabin is a traitor. And when they distributed the poster with Rabin in the uniforms, SS uniforms, Netanyahu stayed there and continued his speech. So, you know, I mean, one of the people I interviewed there, one of my colleagues, a very well-known journalist in Israel, Nahum Barnea, a decorated journalist, he said in the film that Netanyahu did not want that Rabin would be killed, but he didn't care that the extreme right was hinting about in that direction. He was riding, Barnea said, he was riding on the back of a tiger. And that's his mode of operation since then. Now, the film also is explaining the failure of the Shin Bet, the security service, that did not defend Rabin, although there were so many signals and tips that something might happen, including the description of the assassin. And Igal Amir, a young student, 25 years old at that time, from Bar Ilan University, a religious university. So the atmosphere was poisonous, and it led to the murder. And after the murder, Peres was an interim prime minister, and he wanted to quiet the public. He wanted to appease the rabbis. He met with the rabbis. He wanted unity. which eventually also led that Netanyahu would be elected in 96 for his first term. Now, what happened also as a result of that incident is the spread of conspiratorial theories. And Netanyahu was among them. The day after the murder, he called me in my office in Haaretz, in South Tel Aviv, and he said, "You know the term, follow the money?" I said, "Sure." So he tried to hint that Igal Amir was on the payroll of the security services. Therefore, it was the security services who actually were behind the murder of Rabin. And since then, these conspiratorial theories, if they were at the time small seeds in the soil, now they are big sequoia trees. Fake news, conspiracy theories are all over, including in the last 2 years during the war.
And that's where you would make your connection, even with the events of 30 years ago and the past 2 years. Netanyahu is prime minister, the country often wondering what went wrong. How was it not known by Shin Bet and the military that Hamas was planning to invade Israel? And Netanyahu and people close to him are suggesting, as you say, all sorts of conspiracy theories just so no one will point at Netanyahu's failure. Is that about right?
Absolutely. One of the reasons why this Netanyahu started spreading the conspiratorial theories, and that's why, and one of the reasons why he talked to me, he wanted to divert the attention and the blame from the Israeli right and from himself, and therefore, every ploy, every trick is legitimate in his eyes. Now, in after October 7th, coalition ministers in Netanyahu's government, they are accusing of the Shin Bet of being traitors. That they were not only that they were not alert enough to prevent the attack, by the brutal, terrible attack by Hamas, but actually they wanted it to happen. So 30 years after, the events of Rabin's murder resonates with what we see today: conspiracy theories, incitement, which is in full volume. Netanyahu is the link between then and today, and Israel is even more divided than ever.
One other thing, if I may, and perhaps not covered in your film, certainly in the rest of the world, when we think back to a peace effort, right, the Oslo Accords with President Bill Clinton in 1993, and Rabin assassinated in 1995, people ask, what could have been, right, if he hadn't been assassinated, if he and Shimon Peres had proceeded to deepen the cooperation with the PLO? What do you think? Or there's so many moving parts that you wouldn't have had peace with the Palestinians. I mean, what do you think would have been different?
Well, no one has the crystal ball to foresee the future. Obviously, at that time, there were so many obstacles that I wouldn't blame only the assassination of Rabin, that the peace process completely died, but it contributed to the fading of the peace notion. Now, Arafat, of course, has to be blamed. Certainly, Hamas, that doesn't recognize the right of Israel to exist. But yes, it's a turning point in the history of Israel. All the people I interviewed for the film, they said that Israel has changed since then. That was the beginning of the process, and now I think we reached the heyday. Although I'm not sure we hit the bottom of what is happening. I'm not sure about it. Maybe worse is to come.
That's Yossi Melman, who's, of course, a very well-known journalist and author in Israel, and also now a filmmaker. Your documentary that's premiered on Israeli TV Hot 8 is called Mesitim Mabat, which means averting their gaze, but Mesitim also means incitement. And so it is a very clever title indeed. Yossi Melman and I are also co-authors of 6 books, including Every Spy a Prince, Spies Against Armageddon, Inside Israel's Secret Wars, and most recently, Target Iran, which tells how Mossad agents penetrated Iran in the hope of smashing that country's nuclear program. That's a new book, Target Iran. Yossi Melman, good luck with the film, and of course, good luck in all your projects, some of them with me. Thank you, Yossi.
Thank you, Dan, and good luck with our new book, Target Iran.